Hello and welcome to the Conskipper podcast. I'm Skipper John,
And I'm Skipper Nick.
and we're here to talk about the hot film in theaters and on HBO Max this weekend, The Suicide Squad. Not to be confused with the other Suicide Squad film.
The original, which was, I guess, just Suicide Squad? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And there are stark differences between these two pictures. Um, and we'll talk about that maybe a little bit, or else we can forget about that other film if you'd like. But today, Nick and I are going to talk about The Suicide Squad and try to help our readers decide if this movie is worth a watch, whether they should skip it or buy a ticket. So let's talk about this, Nick, and see where it takes us.
Could take us all sorts of avenues.
So what'd you think of this one?
Well, as you well know, my expectations for DC movies is pretty low. And leading up to this, I think, when we get to the end and we talk about skip it or ticket, when HBO Max announced that they would be showing Suicide Squad,
The
I'm
Suicide
sorry, of course,
Squad.
the Suicide Squad, James Gunn's Suicide Squad, in in the privacy of your own home, the comfort of your own home. That's where I figured I would watch it, and in fact I did watch it there. But I don't think I would have been as likely to watch it, I think, if I didn't hear the buzz about it and see the high ratings, the critics and such. But even with those things, you can be fooled, of course.
Are you sure you weren't lured in by that name, James Gunn?
That definitely had a little bit to do with it. I think if it was David Ayer's Suicide Squad Part 2, I think I would probably wouldn't be on my list. But the James Gunn name certainly drew me in.
Well, it's certainly a brand. What if it were Martin Scorsese's Suicide Squad?
I would be in the theater the day that movie came out. Now, if that did happen, we'd be living in a true alternate universe.
It would have had better jokes, though.
Yeah, it would have had better jokes if Scorsese did it. True. But getting back to your question, and I know we're going to talk about the ins and outs of it.
I want to see Joe Pesci as Captain Boomerang.
That would definitely get the R rating if he was if he was that character. But I was pleasantly surprised. I went in with very, very low expectations, as I said previously, and I did enjoy this film much more than I thought I would. And even with the critical, reviews and such, I thought, well, we'll see if they get this one right or wrong. And I found myself enjoying it much more than I expected.
Here's the nicest thing that I could say about the Suicide Squad. There are now 3 films where Margot Robbie plays Harley Quinn.
Mm-hmm.
If you have to see a movie where Margot Robbie plays Harley Quinn,
Yep.
this is the movie that you should watch.
I would agree.
It's the best one out of that batch. That's not giving it a lot of credit.
I understand.
There are other things that I liked about the movie. There were also a lot of things that aggravated me about the movie. As somebody who, as you know, is tired of the entire genre.
Yes, I understand. Yep. I mean, you are. And so I think that in approaching a film like this, it's going to have to be a real curveball, I think, at this point for you to enjoy it.
And this movie is being advertised as the curveball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's not.
I would agree with you there.
It does things, here's the thing. It's got kind of fresh paint over the same formula. Like this there are things I think audience members will be surprised by, especially maybe people who, we grew up on a lot of the movies that James Gunn grew up on,
right?
That he's really that have influenced this film,
Right, sure.
And for this to be, like if you're a kid in high school when Guardians of the Galaxy comes out, and now you're in college and this one comes out, you might be, shocked by some of the violence in this movie.
Yeah, yeah.
That kind of stuff didn't really faze me, because I've seen a whole ton of violent movies.
Yeah.
Right. So I needed a little bit more than just like, oh, look at this is really gory,
Sure.
And at the end of the day, this is a movie about a superhero team that's apprehensive at first and learns how to work together and then fights a giant CGI monster at the end.
Right.
It's the same movie. The twists and everything, like, I forgot about them. They went in one ear and out the other because they didn't matter to what was going on here.
Yeah. I guess, and I don't disagree with you, that it's formulaic. I guess what surprised me about it is that we have a DC movie now that's able to successfully deliver on this formula. Now, again, is it paint by numbers? Absolutely. Like most of the superhero fare is. But I was surprised, and I obviously I'd give the credit to Gunn on this, that he was able to land those moments and tell, the ragtag, like you said, the ragtag, group of villains / heroes that comes together to triumph at the end, and has some endearing characters, and has, some lovable ones, and has some ones that, we'll want to see again, I imagine. But that they did it effectively, because we're coming off of, Justice League,
Sure.
Snyder Cut, the original, the Suicide Squad, a lot of junk.
I would argue that Shazam does that though well.
I think it does, and I like Shazam, but I think that this one was more enjoyable to me. I thought the cast was better in this than in Shazam. I thought the actors were better, and I thought Gunn got more out of them than we normally or ever get in a DC film. Case in point, Viola Davis. I thought when she is in this film, and she plays the same character in the first one, right? She was phoning it in, right? In that first one. This one, when she gets angry, it reminded me a little bit of Rose from Fences, but she's using more foul language. But I think as the villain of the film, and there are a number of villains, she came across as sort of the character which you're supposed to get from the comics. This woman who's the real boss lady, who doesn't care if there's collateral damage, and I got that from I liked her in that role, and she wasn't on screen too much, but I liked her in that role.
Now for me, I'm coming off of the last time I saw her was in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and she is on fire in that movie, and just like a complete powerhouse. So like when you talk about like phoning in, like that was obviously like a work of passion. That,
Sure.
We're talking about two different levels. Which is what Martin Scorsese, I think, meant all along.
And he's right.
Davis knows that she knows what she's doing, August Wilson.
Sure.
And she knows when she's
doing a superhero
film.
And she understands what type of performance you bring. But even in the other one, I thought this was a higher degree of craft than in the first one.
A better example, I think, would be John Cena, who has a lot of heart, and it's like really kind of like in person. I mean, like
he's personable.
He's often, I think, like more endearing when he's just John Cena.
Yeah,
delivering like a public service announcement than when he's in the movies that he's been in.
I agree.
And I thought that there were elements of acting in this movie that he usually doesn't pull off when he's on screen.
Yes, I would agree with you there. You know, he's always going to be compared to every other wrestler who comes to Hollywood, as they all have been. Where in the last 20 years, we've had some wrestlers who have actually become legitimate actors. Of course, we're not talking about Hulk Hogan starring in a movie in the 90s, but I think he has a more difficult time transitioning to this world of acting, maybe than Dwayne Johnson or Drax.
Dave Bautista.
Yeah, thank you, Dave Bautista, who can pull off different types of roles. So I agree with you that Gunn probably gets the most out of him. I guess the story is that when James Gunn called up, when John Cena's phone rang and he said, "Hi, this is James Gunn. I'd like be in a movie." And yes, what do you mean yes? I'll do it. Well, you don't know what it is. Don't worry, I don't care. And so because he knows it brings some credibility or status.
And giving him the character of Peacemaker, who is there's this quality to the character that he doesn't get the whole picture.
Yes.
That might help.
In
the John Cena role. Like the character's commitment to like a stupid idea.
Right.
I thought was not much of a stretch.
Right. Right.
But I thought that was an idea of where maybe the director elevates the actor, right? But then you've got folks like Idris Elba and Margot Robbie, who don't have demonstrated excellence in a variety of other films, a variety of other genres. So then when they're in this kind of movie, like, what do they do?
Right.
Harley Quinn is such a popular character who's never had a great movie. And I think people still, like the Batman fans from going back.
Right.
It's still like the animated series.
Oh, for sure.
That everyone thinks of like who Harley Quinn is.
Yes.
And Robbie captures like the voice and the personality and the character even in these terrible movies. There's these elements where there's no one else could play that character.
Right.
Like Margot Robbie could. And even in this film, again, it's her best. This is the best Harley Quinn live action
that you can see
so far, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even then, I felt like there were missteps with her character, just like clumsy writing. Like they gave her some stupid lines here and there, like just these throw-ins. I almost felt like sometimes, like just to beef up the part for the character, like some of the these dumb jokes and gags, especially towards the end.
I like this movie. I don't think it's any surprise. I like this movie a lot more than you did. But as far as Harley Quinn and Robbie's performance in it, I liked the movie better when she was not on screen. I liked it when it focused on Elba's Bloodsport, who again is a throwaway, character. Mm-hmm. Ratcatcher,
Rick Flag.
He was good in it, surprisingly.
Yeah.
And when she came on, other than the scene when she's being wined and dined, so to speak, by the by El Presidente, I thought that scene was good with her, and a couple of the action scenes, but the whole persona of the character. And I like Harley Quinn, but I did. My favorite version of her, as you said, is in the animated series, but never one of my favorites. But I think in this film, it works better when she's not on screen.
It's interesting that you say that, because they also separated her from the group for most of the movie.
They did.
Which, allowed her to kind of have her moments where she shines. Like, I thought the part where she was being, interrogated and everything, I thought that was a good,
good.
Solo scene.
Yeah.
But it also makes it harder for her to, be a part of the group. Like, remember when she reunites with Rick Flag? And,
yes.
We're supposed to, based on how she reacts when she sees him, that they have like this incredible history,
Right.
that's never been built up on screen at any place, any time.
Place. Right.
So, I felt like Gunn, who's like, been marketed as this guy, like, oh, this movie's gonna be gross and a little vulgar, but there's a lot of heart, right?
Right,
Like, that's
right,
his
right.
whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Aw, shucks, there's a lot of heart and soul to this. I didn't see a lot of that it's even like the stuff with like Bloodsport and his daughter and everything. It just seemed like just this like, textbook kind of like, the character moments for me were not as powerful as the ones in Guardians of the Galaxy, the first film, which I think is an excellent film. And I haven't seen that replicated in the films that have come out after
since. I will disagree with you a little bit about Bloodsport and Ratcatcher 2 as far as those emotional.
No, I mean with his actual daughter.
Oh, with the actual daughter.
Yeah, like remember he's like swearing at his daughter.
Oh yeah,
she's swearing at him.
I like that.
Then the whole movie, it's just like, oh, they're gonna kill his daughter.
Right. I thought this movie did well in terms of, and this is a trap for, superhero movies for a long time, particularly DC movies, is that there's this need to explain everything. And to sort of ground it in whatever the people at Warner Brothers decide is going to be the way they're going to take the DC characters this week. Whatever we're going to focus on this week.
Even in the comics.
Yeah, I mean, New 52. I mean, they've been every reboot under the sun.
Right. And
as far as like not explaining things, like even when you introduce Bloodsport, who again is nobody nobody you need to care about in the DC comic universe, but he shows up and they say, oh, he shot Superman with a kryptonite bullet, and they never talk about anything else. He doesn't mention Superman. They never go into it again, and that's just it. They don't need to give you a bunch of minutia to to beef it up. And I like the scene when he was in like the on the other side of the glass with his daughter, and you knew that he cared about her, and they didn't have much time to obviously develop that, but I thought it was enough, and especially with his sort of affection for Ratcatcher 2, you saw that as like an extension of him as a dad, and that's because both of them do a fine job, and I thought she was really good, that Daniela Melchior. And she was, she does good in that. I like that, again, like these little things for fans of the old material where they call her Ratcatcher 2. Like that's such a comic book thing, like there's so many legacy heroes and villains, but they don't all, and the vignette with her dad, which explains like where she came from and how she got her powers, so to speak, or device. They did it quickly. It wasn't like this thing going on and on. First of all, because we don't know these characters, because there hasn't been much done with them in the past. But you just get into it and like you accept it and you see where she's coming from quickly. Gunn doesn't have. He's got a lot of time in the movie. Like it's
too much time.
Yeah, it's a lot of. I mean, it's over 2 hours, but to get to the action and everything, I thought he did a pretty good job of building those, characters quickly. Without a lot of time spent on.
Now, I think she delivered the best performance in the film.
Yeah,
as Ratcatcher 2. I thought that again for that all the kind of hype that surrounds Gunn's films, I thought that she did the greatest job of exhibiting legitimate empathy. That. Even when other characters were in those moments where it didn't come close, like she really stepped into like a third-rate role for even this movie, because you're talking about like a character no one cares about,
right?
In a role where she's like literally playing opposite like these titans of Hollywood,
sure,
right? And ends up delivering again the most empathetic performance. You actually care about her, and you see the other characters through her eyes, and this like sense of goodness that she has. And I think for like an actress that's relatively new
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
Hollywood, I found her I thought she delivered the best performance, and I thought that that character was one of the best characters in the movie.
I would totally agree with you. I think when she's on screen, whether interacting with the other ones, as you said, with her teammates or with the villains, or when she's just telling her own, experience, it's definitely very engaging. And again, I think very surprising because she's so really new to this
Right.
to the business, and also that she's barely featured in the advertising.
Right.
She's barely known. The characters is barely known in the to the at all to the general population, even to comic fans. Is a pretty obscure character. I mean, that's the whole thing, taking these obscure characters and trying to play Moneyball with them. But
Now, next most empathetic character of the film, which should be no surprise to Guardians of the Galaxy fans, right?
yeah.
Is Sylvester Stallone as King Shark.
Yes.
This was, in my opinion, as someone who I didn't love this movie.
Right.
I think that that Gunn managed to get lightning to strike twice.
Yeah.
To take the Groot character and then pull that same thing off again. Right?
Yeah,
like
sure.
You get a CGI, like ridiculous CGI character.
Yeah.
You get a Hollywood A-lister tough guy to do the voice.
Right.
Right. And it's not a typical voice acting gig.
No.
Right.
No, not known for it.
Yeah, and it came off as funny and sincere throughout. And Stallone, was never known for like, for good voiceover, for even delivering the lines of his own in his own
in
films.
a live action film.
I thought he was a perfect fit for it, and I really liked that character as well.
I did too. And funny, like you mentioned, he is sort of the Groot of this picture, but a much more violent character as well, right? Like everybody is in the movie.
Yeah.
But he's still lovable.
Right.
You see his, the childlike, mindset he has, and in a lot of those scenes, especially near the end in the aquarium, and it's, he does, and it's of all the things you would think if you're going to have that, Rocket and Groot in style characters, people would balk at it. But I think a vast majority
Right.
of the praise for the film is for the two characters you mentioned.
And this is another character that came out of like the worst period of comics.
Yes.
Which is funny that
Yeah.
I would argue that only DC movies, what you say have a sordid history,
Sure.
have a reputation for elevating the worst comic book characters into like these great film roles. Like the other one, of course, being Tom Hardy's Bane character.
Oh gosh, yeah.
But it's funny how they could like reclaim these like 90s DC characters.
Right.
It makes me wonder if somebody out there can make a good Lobo movie.
Oh, if my God. After this, James Gunn would.
Doesn't that sound like Gunn material?
Oh my goodness, it would be absolutely up his alley. And it's funny you mentioned Lobo because he was right before that big the big crash that killed comics for a while. Mm-hmm. And King Shark and all those other tough guy characters that really populate Suicide Squad. We're kind of following his footsteps. Obviously, there are other characters before Lobo, but that irreverent, wise guy,
right.
And tough talking and cigar chomping and all that other kind of a thing. But yes, they are able to it works, and that's I guess the maybe the problem for the DC fan, the tried and true DC fan, is that so you can make a Ratcatcher 2 and King Shark work,
right?
But
right.
you can't make Green
Superman
Lantern.
and
right? Superman. You can't do a Flash.
Right.
You can't get these characters that have 80 years of history, 80 years of stories to draw
It
from.
really is baffling.
I don't understand it, but
since we're now talking about a Dream Lobo film, I also think Ratcatcher 1, Taika Waititi might make a good Lobo movie.
he could.
And
Sure.
And Edgar Wright might be able to make a good Lobo movie.
I would agree with that. He deserves a chance. He never got that chance with Ant-Man.
With Marvel, yeah.
Right. I mean, he would do well with that material.
So, but just to clarify for our readers, Lobo is not in the Suicide Squad.
No, he's not.
But there are a whole ton of other characters.
Oh yeah.
And they carry the film. It is a character-centric movie.
Right.
Let's face it, the plot is not carrying this film.
No.
I don't know what happened in it still, and I don't really care. And if you wanted to tell me more about what happens in it, I'm not going to bother to listen.
Right.
I know that they're in a jungle, and they're blowing things up, and then there's a starfish.
Right.
Which is all you really need to know.
Yeah, it's basic. I mean, they definitely, it's not going to surprise you with the story, and I think it's sort of the anti Snyder cut, which is just storyline upon storyline. This giant Jenga assemblage of storylines, which some people care about and most people don't. It's as basic as you can get as an '80s. It's as basic as Commando,
right?
The Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. But I like Commando.
And it had moments of Commando and Predator and all those other classics in there. And I certainly enjoyed them.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like because the story was so sparse, though, that some of the James Gunn moments, right? Like, remember at the end with Harley Quinn swimming around in that muck?
Yes.
And there was all the pretty colors and the heartfelt music and everything. I didn't feel that. Like, you're just like, it's a James Gunn movie. You're supposed to feel it in your heart.
Right.
This is one of those, Star-Lord saving Gamora.
Yeah.
And I just didn't feel it because there was no gravity to the movie for me. Because it was this movie went out of its way to be like, we're irreverent. Main character could die any second.
Yeah.
It did hurt the stakes of it a little bit. You know what I mean? There was never any gravity. And for me, it made the finale not really stick its landing.
See, I liked the ending, and I think I was, again, with the basic plot, because I liked the characters in this film. I liked Bloodsport, I liked Ratcatcher, I liked King Shark, I liked Polka Dot Man. I like these characters. I liked Rick Flag, shockingly. With the first film where they tried this, I could care less about any of those characters. And some were characters I cared a lot about from comics.
Right.
Killer Croc was one of my favorite Batman villains.
Sure.
And he is just a big lug in the original film. Katana was an important member of the Batman and the Outsiders, who I really liked and had a rich history. And she's just thrown in there because they want somebody with a samurai sword. I think that I like those characters. I like what they're doing, and I rooted for them on a very visceral level. It wasn't intellectually stimulating to me, but I believed their motivation, and I liked them, and you want to see them do well. And of course, it's no surprise to anybody, like in every superhero or every hero story, they save the day. Against all odds.
But just to be clear, that's not what we were sold, though.
Yeah, you're right.
We were sold that this is going to be a movie that elevates the genre,
right?
In a way that Guardians of the Galaxy 1 did, and 2 started to show the problems in the formula.
Cracks. Yeah.
And if you want to talk about where this can improve, it's there. It's the fact that this movie is 2 hours and 12 minutes long when this should have been 90 minutes. If Mr. Gunn was looking to replicate those 80s
classics,
gritty action films, give me a good, a well-edited 90-minute powerhouse and leave me wanting more
Right.
than putting too much in and making me want it to end.
Right.
And for me, that goes with some of the action sequences that felt like they were just overblown or too much or unnecessary, and absolutely these darn jokes. Now, that's another problem with this genre. And, it began in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It did indeed.
Just joke after joke after joke, and where the characters start to not even matter because every character is capable of delivering the same sarcastic, witty, tongue-in-cheek remark. And, this is absolutely, a, a James Gunn staple.
Sure.
But cut it back, like I got a question for you.
Yeah.
At what point for you did the whole gag about how the polka dot man sees his mother and everyone, and then there must have been, I'm not exaggerating here, there's probably 4 or 5 scenes in this movie,
right,
of his perspective and everybody's his mom.
Right.
When did that stop being funny for you?
That's a good question. The big finale, I thought it was even a little bit of a riff on the ending of the first Avengers film. When Bloodsport kind of takes over and tells King Shark, sick him. That kind of like was the Hulk smash moment. The whole mother thing with 3D Man. I think the joke lands perfectly when it subtly comes up at the beginning of the film, when he's just like, oh, well, what do you do? Oh, I picture them as my mother, and that's the classic serial killer thing. It works well. But yeah, I think they probably could have gone away from that joke. But this isn't a restrained film.
The Milton thing went
on.
The
Milton
forever.
Thing wasn't good. I mean, that seemed to almost like to fill or explain what happened to the man, the bus driver.
Just to clarify with Polka Dot Man, if he said it in the beginning, I see everything as my mom, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And at the end of it, was the one and only time they did it.
That would have
it could have played for a massive laugh.
Yes.
But it had happened so many times at that point.
Yeah, you're right.
That it was just, okay, now this is happening again.
Yeah, you're right. If they had held it off until that big finale, it would have landed a lot stronger.
And it's almost like when you have to just like keep doing the same joke,
right?
Continue to just beat the audience over the head with something. It hurts the overall picture. That's why I keep saying these movies need to be edited so that the audiences aren't stupid.
No.
And people watch things over and over again. This movie's available on streaming the day it comes out.
Right.
If I want to see a scene again, I can rewind, I can pause it, I can fast forward.
Right.
The audience will get that stuff. You don't need to like leave a trail of breadcrumbs.
Yeah, I think that was the. That's the thing with modern filmmaking, especially modern, pop culture filmmaking. That when you make a film that doesn't say here's the punchline and just delivers it, it's better. But I think you need to give the audience more credit. That's why the first one, I thought, again, to go back to it. Now, this is a much superior film to that first, to the one that we had in 2016. But the way that they built characters from that first film, where it's like, we have to show that these are some tough dudes, and then so they introduce someone, and here comes Paranoid, oh, and here's another movie, here's Sympathy for the Devil. It's just like one after another, after another, after another, just rapid, like you don't need to convince me.
Ayer supposedly had nothing to do with that, by the way.
I mean, and he might not have, with as far as the control that some of these directors have. But I think that with, giving people credit and letting, like you said, you don't need to lead them to these things. I think that's a good piece of advice for all filmmakers and all people producing this kind of content.
Except for, I don't remember that problem in The Irishman, even though it was nearly
It
4
was
hours long.
Right. No, you didn't have that problem.
But, different directors.
It's different. It's a different style.
Different sense of craft,
It's different genre.
So we are at that fateful moment. We've got to decide, are we going to recommend this film? Are we going to recommend that fans skip it or buy a ticket? What do you say, Skipper Nick?
I say buy a ticket. And I say that because even though it's formulaic, I think that the actors do a much better job. I think Gunn does a better job than most of the people who have worked in DC Universe. And certainly going back to the well with what he's known for from previous films with the violence and the humor and everything else. But I was engaged. I enjoyed the experience, which is not usually my experience with DC movies. And I like the characters. And I think if you're looking for that type of a film with, as you said, maybe not this new take on the genre, because it's not, as it's been hyped, but as a solid, fun superhero film, and with the brand DC Comics or DC Universe on it, I think it was successful. I would buy a ticket and I would watch it again on HBO Max.
Now, we try not to talk about these movies before we sit down for our podcast.
True, yep.
But you did say to me, now, I think we might both have come to the middle a little bit since we first talked about this.
Right.
Because I told you I hated it.
Yeah, you did.
And you said that it was the best DC movie ever.
Ever in the new crop.
Are you willing to walk that back a little bit?
Yeah, after we spoke about it. Now, it's funny because the one that I like the best, when I really thought to myself, which one do I like the best?
Yeah.
It's Man of Steel.
Still.
It's still Man of Steel. And I might put this second.
You put this ahead of Joker.
I don't. Joker's not in the mix.
Oh, come on, that's not fair.
That's not
Joker's
Joker's a better
out.
film. Yeah, no, but I'm talking about in this brand.
So it's
this Joker. The Joker's a different thing.
You're getting too specific here.
Right. If you want to talk,
Joker counts, and Joker's a better movie.
If it counts, yes, then this is 3.
I think here's the movies that I think are better than this one.
Okay.
Joker, Wonder Woman, Shazam, Man of Steel.
Okay.
I think that it sits. I would sit this around for me.
Right.
Like around the Shazam territory.
I think that's a fair assessment.
I would put Man of Steel, Wonder Woman, and Joker
ahead of it,
above it. If I had to watch one, those would be what I would go for.
Right. Which is so funny too that we're talking about, the last 10 years of DC movies, and it is like it's such a mixed bag, and I think I was okay with this one being in the mixed bag, but it's tough to delineate them, I think, because of that.
So here's what I think. Now, I had more trouble with this movie, I think, than you did. And I know that part of it is I'm just so burnt out on this formula, and the jokes of these types of movies kind of like get under my skin when they're not funny.
Right.
Like I'd rather there be 1 or 2 funny jokes in a movie.
Yeah.
That I'm thinking about, like I'm still thinking about the jokes in like Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Sure.
Now, like decades after I first saw that film, because there's a handful of them.
Right.
And they're awesome. You know,
I would agree.
I'd rather be able to count on my hand how many jokes there are and that they're funny
Right.
than something like this where it's just like a blast of, you know,
Sure.
just things that you'll just forget seconds later.
Yep.
So, but anyways, here's the problem, right? Suicide Squad, right? Without the,
Right.
that's a skip it.
Oh, no doubt.
Birds of Prey, that's a skip it.
Yep.
If you want to see Margot Robbie Harley Quinn movie, this is the one you got to buy the ticket for.
Ah.
And I would say, you know, Ratcatcher 2 helped me get there. King Shark helped me get there. It's got enough going on. I don't think this is not, you know, some new wave of superhero cinema.
No.
This is not proof that an auteur can elevate the genre. And by the way, in a way that Todd Phillips, who I would argue is not as proficient of a director as James Gunn,
Yeah.
but elevated Joker
Right.
to a much better level than this film.
True.
So, you know, with that caveat, like, you're not going to be blown away. You'll have a good time.
Yeah.
And for that, you got to buy a ticket.
There you go.
But I feel a little dirty saying it.
I understand. We obviously, as you said, we talked about it a little beforehand, and I think we have sort of calmed down a little bit as far as our impressions of it. But it's for what it is, like you said, it's not a Joker, it's not Logan, it's not this ones that people look back and say it's not Nolan's Batman trilogy. But for the run of the mill, you know, superhero fare. Especially after we've seen so much already, and we've already seen him do it, Gunn do it before.
Right.
I would, you know, recommend it.
Right. Logan and Joker deconstructed the genre.
Yes.
And were examples of postmodern superhero films.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of you know, there should be more of those in this age. Like, we're coming up on a decade of this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's about time that, you know, like, if it's around to stay, like, we need directors to push this and start examining it from different levels.
Yes.
This movie's doesn't do that.
No, it's not. This isn't the one to do it or to even say it does it.
But, you know, there's not a lot of fun things going on this summer. You know, the Limp Bizkit tour just got canceled.
That's out.
You're looking to have some fun at home. You know, pull this up on HBO Max. Want to venture out to the theater?
Go check it out.
I don't know what else you're going to see. So I guess get a ticket for this one.
Right, might as well, I guess.
So the skippers have spoken. We say buy a ticket.
Got it.
And we will be back talking about some other film sometime in the future.
Yes, we will.
In this post-pandemic, return
landscape.
pandemic.
And you know, and if you want to just read some excellent stuff, of course, we want to push you over to the website conskipper.com. We got a lot of interviews going up. We just put up an interview with Paul Kupperberg, who was responsible for Peacemaker, reinventing that character in the late '80s, and they're going to be, you know, taken into a television series, and of course a lot of good news and reviews on there. So even outside of the podcast, you can find a lot of information.
And if you're looking for some comic book material that does elevate the genre, we've got fresh interviews with the writer and artist behind The Good Asian.
Fantastic.
So if you're looking to venture out into territory to see what people are doing to elevate the genre, head over to conskipper.com. In the meantime, read your comic books, watch your movies. We'll be back talking to you soon.
See you soon.